What's up, Ultralight Weirdos? It's Denny, and I'm going to be doing a quick review of my I'm Thirsty in the Desert bag. So, early in October, I was out in Escalante National Monument for a 5-day route finding, canyoneering, backpacking trip. I arrived sick, and it was a really intense trip for me, and I stayed pretty sick. But I built a bag for the trip to be able to carry up to 2 gallons of water and 5 days of food. So, this is that bag. I want to talk about the performance of the bag, the materials, things that I can do to improve. Notice that it has a 2-inch hip belt. It has one fixed length here, and then an adjustable length. You might have seen the dirt just kind of come off of that. It's definitely still dirty and pretty scratched up. This was sewn into the X-Pac VX21 back panel here for extra stability. Performed extremely well. It was really comfortable. I was shocked. I really didn't feel like I needed any padding to be carrying around my hips here. It was very comfortable, and it carried what amounts to over 16 pounds of water plus 12 pounds of food and 10-ish pounds of gear. Well, 10 pounds of gear, including camera and electronic gear, really well. Normally we're carrying about 1 gallon maximum of water. Finding potholes to fill up or natural springs. And out in the desert, you'd be surprised when you get so thirsty how good really old pothole water tastes. And sometimes it tastes really bad. So I think the hip belt in that context was absolutely required. It would have been really, really, really hard to have done the hike without it. Like I said, this is just 2 inches of nylon webbing, basically a car seat belt material, and a 2-inch buckle. And yeah, I was shocked again at just how comfortable it made the pack carry. It was really, really nice. On the same lines, I did add a non-adjustable sternum strap. And that really did help even out the pressure across my chest and sort of bring the top of the bag a little bit closer. Now, even with that much water in my pack, the pack volume itself wasn't very tall, and so it wasn't getting beyond my shoulder length. So from a torso length perspective, the pack was about 18 inches. Because I was using a hip belt, I think I might have liked maybe a 19-inch torso length. I'm a 6-foot tall dude, and I have a somewhat long torso. I wouldn't say like abnormally long, but I think hip belt, torso length rather, matters more when you're using a hip belt than when you're not. On the shoulder straps, I have 2 large pockets, one for my phone, one that I use for like sunglasses, bandana, and then a tight one here, which I carried chapstick and sunscreen and like headphones that I never ended up using because we just didn't. This was not a cruiser hike.
We just descended from here and did some rock climbing down.
It was just an all-in, attention-demanding, all-day hike. Surprisingly, of the shoulder straps pockets, the flat one was the only one that did develop holes, and quite a few actually. And that was largely because there was just a piece of chapstick there, and there were certain phases of the hike where we were going under ledges with 200-foot exposures, and we had to drag our packs for safety reasons.
That was the ledge cross. Fucking insane. But what do you think, man? Worth it?
So From a design perspective, I really enjoyed this pocket. I think I might make it a little bit looser, but have the tight part be this elastic band at the very top. It served really well for sort of those small little things that you want accessible. So I think that I would add another one to the left side here. I did include a external frame. What it is actually just a carbon fiber tent pole that is intended to be used with my tarp that I've made. So I made a tarp as well for this trip that's sort of a bomber tarp made out of sil poly. It's got two storm doors in the front and a beak in the back. And the intent was to distribute the load from the top of the pack down through into the into the hip belt really successfully. I didn't notice too much of the benefits of this, largely because I wasn't carrying much weight above my shoulders. And so in the way that I distributed the weight throughout my pack, things were heavy and at the bottom, including the water that I carried. So it wasn't as instrumental as it might be for someone who's has a larger volume of stuff, is carrying a larger volume of food, and their stuff is just heavier. But it did work out really well, and including the carbon fiber poles on both sides, this pack is still under 1 pound. So I was really pleased with my goals with making this pack, which were to have a frame, have a hip belt, and have it be able to comfortably and reliably carry upwards of almost 40 pounds or more. And again, I was probably maximally carrying about 42 pounds at once, on average for the first couple days, more like 30, and then by the end of the trip, more like 20. And again, the bulk of that was just water. The material, like I said on the back, is this VX21. I think the red looks pretty sharp. The sides, VX7, and 21 is 210 denier, 70 denier, and then the front is a light skin, or LS7. So it's 70 denier, but it's treated differently. I find the light skin definitely is not quite as durable, and the reinforcement points do need to be reinforced much better. So the tension from my buckle here did cause a slight tear in the material here, and that's something that a repair can't do. I did reinforce this, but the tear happened above the reinforcement point where I had overstitched too much. So that was a mistake of my own, designing this pack, and that's an easy fix as well. Just some simple stuff like I don't have any of the snaps here. I don't find them to be super useful. I just have 2 clips here at the sides. These are 3/8 inch gross grain ribbon, and then a 3/8 inch clip. And all I do is I just fold this top part like this, again like that, a little bit, like that. Push it down. It's not seam sealed, but it still manages to prevent a lot of air and water coming in. Clip at the top, and then take my 1/2 inch nylon and clip and tighten. Next time I would probably also have the insertion point here a little bit farther down in the pack. I have a huge lycra mesh pocket here. I think it didn't need to be quite as long. Maybe 2 inches shorter would have been better and made more sense. But it was really useful to have. I really do like this large lycra pocket. It did develop some holes here, and again, that's largely because of how I was treating this pack, which was dragging it along sandstone, which is really, really, really rough on gear for certain parts that were just too dangerous to be carrying a pack. Or throwing the pack down when we were down climbing certain sections, where we just had to down climb in order to get through the trip. This was my first experience doing any sort of rock climbing as well, and yeah, I was pretty freaked out at parts. It was definitely a really intense experience for me, and really taught me the true line of the fear of stuff that doesn't involve dying, and then the fear of stuff that really does involve potentially dying.
Ledge down.
I don't mean to be hyperbolic at all when I say that, just to emphasize that there were some interesting insights through those sorts of experiences as well. Definitely built a lot of confidence in me for my ability to be out in the wilderness by myself or with friends as well. Again, this bottom lycra also developed a couple of holes, but surprisingly, all things considered, held up quite well. Not anything that I need to really spend a lot of time fixing. If I want to, I can go ahead and sew through some of the stuff and just clean it up a little bit, but not too much of a need. You can see it's still pretty dirty, but the bottom pocket was really great. It worked really well. I did use a small trash pocket here on the inside, flush against my back. I don't like it as much there. I like it on the outside. So next time I'll do it like I did. I have a lighter 11 to 12 ounce light skin pack, and that has the trash pocket for the bottom pocket on the outside. I find that more comfortable to stick stuff in there that way. The side pockets were our Cordura 330D denier, and they're not waterproof so that they can drain effectively, but they're really durable, and they held up extremely well. I was able to fit 2 of these 50-ounce Arrowhead water bottles per side. So I was carrying, in essence, 3 of these, as it turned out, and then I lost the cap for one of them, and then I was carrying 3 2 liters. And I was using maximally about 8 liters of water. I was sick, and so I was actually carrying a little bit more water than my friends were on the trip, just to make sure that I was staying hydrated, and even then, I definitely felt dehydrated at parts. It's my 5th night of cold sweats. Came into this trip with a pretty rough cold and a fever, and unfortunately, I'm just not staying warm enough to get better, and my air pads broke, and this is a really challenging trip. It's going to make it more rewarding and build my confidence for sure. But I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't completely exhausted. But the width of the side panel here is about 7 inches, which is perfectly wide enough to accommodate 2 of these water bottles in full, which was surprising and really useful, especially carrying that much water. It was really nice to have immediate access to the water, to be able to refuel more quickly, which still takes a lot of time to do out in the desert, filtering the salty water in the rivers in the Escalante, and in Fool's Canyon and Stevens Canyon, as well as just filtering 2 gallons of water. It just takes a while. So that was a really nice feature. I really like the way that I've designed these side pockets. This design is super simple to do, and it really facilitates a large volume of space. And gosh, I can't think of too much else. It's a pretty simple pack. It worked really well for me. I had a great time. It was a challenging trip, like I said, but absolutely worthwhile trip. I guess the final thing I'll say is that shout out to these 50-ounce Arrowhead water bottles. These are the flimsy ones that you think wouldn't last at all. These got scraped up, dragged along sandstone, never developed a hole. These things are freaking bomb-proof, and they're like 27 grams for 50 ounces of water carry, which is totally nuts. So this, plus a Catadine B-free for anything in Washington, is more than sufficient for water carry for me. And out in the desert, just having a number of these, which you can get at most gas stations, it was clutch. It was super great. So MVP of the trip. The bag ended up working out perfectly, and these were surprisingly useful as well. Yeah, I think in terms of changes that I would make, I can't think of too many. I think maybe having a slightly slimmer side profile might have been useful, but it would have been harder to carry as much water on the side pockets. I do think that I could get the volume of the pack to be a little bit less deep and have it be a little bit higher. I also would have been able to utilize a little bit more of the carbon fiber poles as a result, because the pack really doesn't need to be much taller than this, even with 5 days of food and water, because the water is being carried on the sides. I'd really encourage everybody out there to look into experimenting with making your own gear. It's surprisingly easy, and for me, it's really worthwhile. Fun to kind of think about the use cases that I want to perform under, what things that are going to be useful in those contexts, and then how to actually just achieve that from a design perspective. I've really enjoyed the process. I have no desire to make another bag that's has a hip belt. This is light and totally functional for me. So I think my next bag is probably going to be a tall, narrow, fast pack, light skin pack designed for less caustic physical conditions. So it will be less durable, but intending to do long miles on trails that are marked, trails that are trails, as opposed to route finding, looking for cracks, and going in and out of canyons where best you can. Again, definitely an intense experience out there in Escalante. A wonderful and beautiful place to be. I had a great time, and shout out to my friends Patrick and Andy. It was a wonderful trip to go with those guys. They put up with me being sick and freaked out, and appreciate you dudes for being patient with me while I was learning how to route find and rock climb with a fever in very cold environments. So it was definitely an experience, and tested myself. And like I said, I wouldn't trade it for anything. But it's also not my typical backpacking context. So with that being said, I think I completely nailed it on this pack. There are very few changes that I would make. No need to make this pack again. It's totally sufficient for the intended use that I'll be bringing it out with again if I need to. And yeah, I had a great time out there. I'll maybe include some photos in the during the duration of the talk, so hopefully you guys enjoy those. If you have questions about this pack or how I made it, any sort of measurements or anything like that, feel free to post in the comments or let me know on Reddit. Feel free to follow me along on Instagram. It's Denny Creates. And cheers, guys. See you next time.